now I'm pacing. You see things fell apart, now I'm losing my patience. Lord, how do I deal? I'm losing my power, chasing almighty dollar, not just for the greed, strictly for the don't get it twisted. Ain't looking for it, ain't man looking for me. I'm ignoring them. Lord, 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 how I.
It's hard to deal with low credit and high stress. Wanna progress, can't afford them objects. Baby mama tripping, ain't seeing my aspect. Waiting at my job before I can get my next check. I told her reflect eternal like wine high tech. I'll be back on my feet, just call me Stanley. Album dropping a week, just call it Plan B. Gotta get them greens to fit up in my phalanges. You know how crazy the earth getting. No, I'm not perfect, but I know I'm worth it. That's why mama birthed it, fed it.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe. Wherever we go, we are gonna do what makes us feel right. Train, haven't seen my men at work all day.
Let's go.
Now we're on mute. Okay. Good morning. Good morning for real.
Sorry. Good morning.
My wife has me muted this morning. Let me tell you something. I cannot be silenced.
Oh God.
Not today.
Oh Lord.
Of all days, I cannot be silenced. Welcome to the Soul Purpose Show.
Hello, everybody.
I am Keith.
And I am Monica.
And we are super excited to be here this morning. This obviously is not going to be a political show today because we have a very, very special theme, but certainly we would be remiss if we didn't mention. First of all, thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in every week on the Soul Purpose Show. We're heard live on In Touch News and Facebook live streaming, YouTube, and we have Instagram page, right, and Facebook.
Instagram, Facebook, website, all of the above.
My wife made a website for us.
I tried.
Which is soulpurposeshow.com. So we're just super excited. All right, so let's get into it. First of all, this was a historic week.
Yes,
it was, and it's technically not over yet.
No, it's there. As I explained to someone, now it's two things. So first, I think there's to be applauded that the number of people that came out to vote in this election. I think it's historic. The fact that people are engaged in the process, I think it's phenomenal. That's really what you want.
Yep.
The other part that we talked about this morning was the fact that that these states were not prepared for the major influx of people that came in to vote, which, we can have a conversation about that, whether that's good or bad. Mm-hmm. But then the last thing is they need somebody, grandma, from like a Baptist church, an AME church, some church that on the trustee board that counts the money. Because this count would have been done by now.
It sure would have.
It's been finished.
Look, Big Mama would have walked up in there and be like, "What y'all on break for? Right. We got to count these votes."
Right.
So listen, we all know we're going to have a show obviously dedicated to the election. We're going to recap the election for you in the future. Obviously, when all of the counting is done, when all is said and done. But for right now, we're just super thrilled and pleased that chapter of our lives is behind us. And I think that we can safely say that we're going to be moving forward as a now United States of America moving forward. So all of that said.
So anyway, today, this month, November, if you follow on our Facebook page, November is National Adoption Awareness Month, which is, as you can see, my shirt says Adoption and Ministry. And so for those of you all who know us personally, and we're pretty open publicly about it, Keith and I adopted our son 5 years ago. And so this month in particular is super important for us because we just really always try to encourage people to adopt first. And then secondly, Black folks to adopt, whether you're married, single, whomever. We just really are in that advocacy of adoption for our community. So we decided, like, we dedicated October to HBCUs. We said we're going to try to dedicate some shows in November to adoption since it's National Adoption Month. And so I do have some statistics. Would you like to run down the statistics?
I'll be more than happy to, because I know we both talk fast, but I think it gives some context to why we're here, right? Yeah. So there are over 122,000 children and youth that are waiting to be adopted as we speak. And a lot of them are at risk of aging out of foster care without having permanently, family connection. So approximately 1 in 5 kids in the foster system that are waiting to be adopted are actually teens too. And I have some exposure with some of them as well.
Yeah. And so with respect, so the numbers to me, these are recent numbers. So out of that 122,000, 52% are male, 48% are female, 22% are African-American, 22% are Hispanic, 44% are white. And the average age of those young people are 8. 11% are between 15 and 18 years old, and the average time in foster care is 31 months. And one of the things that when Keith and I made the decision to adopt was looking at the number of Black children, babies up to teens, who were in the system and waiting to be adopted. And if you look at the statistics and you do your own research, you know that Black children and biracial children are disproportionately in the foster care system. And in terms of the numbers, they are easier to place because there are so many Black children considered for adoption. But that's why we wanted to have this conversation. And so we have invited 2 couples on our show who are a part of this adoption family. We have David and Christine Belliard, and then we have Aaron and Jasmine Johnson. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for
having
me.
Good morning.
Good.
Well, we are really thrilled to have you guys on, and I know that not only are you a part of kind of this family of Black adopted parents, but we know that you also represent organizations that you're affiliated with or that you started as well. So we're excited to just kind of get into the conversation today. But let's just start with our own kind of personal journey, because I know that Monica and I, like I said, we adopted, and we've been very open about that, and we can share more about our story kind of as we go along. But Aaron, why don't you and Jasmine just take a moment and share with us kind of how you came into this space.
Yeah, I suppose to pinpoint the conversation a little bit more. Why did you all select adoption? I guess is the more general question.
Okay. Well, we've been married almost 10 years now, and about after the first year of marriage, we started to try to grow our family, but we struggled with infertility for about a few years, and we would see doctors, and they didn't really know what was wrong. We tried the IUI, 1 cycle of that, didn't work, and we just wanted something a little more permanent, so that's what kind of pushed us to adoption rather than keep trying IUI or IVF or whatever, and you're not really guaranteed anything. So we just thought there was more of a guarantee with adoption. Yeah, we might have to wait, but yeah, we just felt like it was a little more secure. So that's what really kind of just pushed us to adoption, Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, pretty much what she said. We did consider fostering for a while. When we went through that process, we were, committed to the whole idea of, what do they call it? Reunification. But it just didn't work out. It wasn't for us, and really it was probably more of a shortcut we were trying to take. But through circumstances, God directed us back to adoption, and it took us a while to get there. I know I can't speak for Jazz, but I know for me it was kind of a faith issue. Is us going to adopt, does that mean we're not trusting that we'll be able to get pregnant and all that? But at some point we just made the jump, and we're glad we did. It was the right move. Everything worked out the way it was supposed to. So that's how we got into it.
David and Christine, question.
Well, our journeys are actually both a bit different. For me, I knew since I was a little girl that I wanted to adopt. It was just always in my heart. My mom reminded me the other day, I told her when I was 8 years old that I wanted to adopt. So I'm a family therapist, and I actually ended up doing an internship working in a residential treatment center and with a foster care adoption agency. So I just remember, it's one thing to hear, like, I'm so glad that Keith shared the statistics, to hear the statistics. It's another thing to see them, to go into where foster children are, and you see faces that look like ours primarily, honestly. And I remember at the time, like in my early 20s, and one of the young ladies who was in foster care, she's like, well, you say that you care so much, you're here every day, why don't you adopt me? And I remember I'm like, well, first off, I'm barely eating. You know what I mean? I'm calling my mom for money still. So, but I remember feeling like, I'm gonna come back. So we really do connect with Aaron and Jasmine, because we have been dating like 6 months. And then we found out that I had reproductive issues. And I remember having the conversation, like, I don't know if you want to continue this, because I may not be able to have biological children. And I remember David, first he was like, well, let me think about it. And I was kind of shocked. Like, well, I thought he was going to say like, no, I'm in it. But but then like 2 minutes later, I remember he called back. He's like, you know what, whatever the road, I want to take it with you. And so we were trying for kids. We considered IVF. I had like 4 or 5 surgeries. Some were like close to death. And it was just one of those things where we actually didn't actively pursue adoption. Our case came to us through foster care, through part of our network. And I think the rest is kind of history. Oh, and I do just have to add this. We always go on an anniversary trip every year. So we were in Cuba. And while we were there, we had like this ceremony that was done. And the minister said, y'all are going to have 2 kids. Yeah. And we were thinking it'd probably be IVF, because, it's likely that you have twins. Yeah. And the next day we got the call about our children. And we have 2 children, a boy and a girl.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, our story is pretty similar to all of it. I mean, I had reproductive issues as well. We did 2 rounds of IVF. And my husband will share, I was tempted to do a 3rd round. And so I have 3 bonus daughters. So this is the second marriage for both of us. And I have 3 bonus daughters who were adults. And so Keith, in his wonderful, gracious, beautiful self, said, okay, we'll get married. We'll do 1. I can add 1 more to my roster. I can add 1 more child to my roster. So, so with the IVF, we did that. We did 2 rounds and they were unsuccessful. And for anybody that has done IVF, it's emotionally taxing, it's physically taxing, and it's not cheap. It's expensive. Yeah. But to me, the more emotional part was the negative result, because you're prayerful, you're faithful, you're saying, God, you give me the desires of my heart. This is what I want. And so the second negative result, I remember, I'm talking to my mom the other day. I remember that day very, very well. And I was angry with the result, because I was like, well, I don't understand. I'm praying, I'm fasting. You said you give me the desires of my heart. I don't understand. And then this man said to me, your prayer was to be a mother. Your prayer never was to be pregnant, and they're different. And so once he said that, I was like, that is correct, because before we had never really, we talked kind of about adoption. We talked about it, but it was kind of one of the options. But I really wanted the experience of being and so my girlfriends and my sister-in-law was like, I don't know what she was praying for that for, because it is overrated. But I wanted the experience of being pregnant and all of that and giving birth. And so that was that. I think that was December 2014. Yeah. Yeah.
And it took a while. I'm just so gratified to hear us as couples really kind of talk about our struggle with with infertility and with other issues, because and I'm curious to hear from the guys on this as well. Because we have been, socialized as a culture to really just kind of keep whatever happens in our house, in between us, we keep it within us. We don't want to talk, openly about it or publicly about it. But the reality of it is, David, going behind closed doors, what was happening in our homes is a real emotional struggle. And it's an opportunity for couples to really kind of show, your mettle. Like, what are you really made of? So Dave, talk to us a little bit about kind of when during those 2 minutes when you had to kind of process what was going on, what was going on in your what was your thought process?
Yeah, it was more like, should I let a good woman go, just because, she possibly, couldn't reproduce or have my child, those 6 months of just being in a relationship with her was phenomenal. And I knew that God placed her with me for a reason. So being able to have that 2 minutes just to reflect and think and ask God, I think I needed that, versus making an impulse decision like, okay, yes or no, and then going with that. But I think making that move and going through that journey was eye-opening. And having our kids now has been such a blessing. So the 2 minutes, it rewarded itself. And I'm blessed now to have a family with my wife.
Because if it would have got to 3, I don't know.
So I do want, so I've heard fostering. You said David and Christine, your children came through fostering.
Correct. Yes.
And Aaron, I know we talked a little bit before the show. Both of us, in terms of couples, our children came through the private adoption agency. Yeah. So, but Aaron, I heard you mention fostering. Did you all do fostering at all?
No, we went through the training and all that, but it just didn't work out. It just
wasn't a good fit.
Wasn't a good fit. We were being clearly directed back towards private adoption, which is, I think, what we should have done from jump. Is just
I was scared about the cost.
Yeah,
that really kind of just. I don't like spending a whole lot of money up front, so that really frightened me.
Yeah.
So but we got over it.
So it's funny, culturally, and our show obviously focuses on issues, within our community. But if you reflect back, like a generation or two before us, the Black family has always been very dynamic, right? So you had some situations where, granddaddy has some kids over here, but then he also has some kids over here, and then he also has some kids over here. And then family get-togethers just featured this, combination of people that were just kind of brought into the family. So at one point, it was really just kind of by default, we were disenfranchised as a people. And so we came to, so the family unit kind of came together in some non-traditional ways. I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on why is it, today in contemporary times, do we still face some of these stigmas around, like formally adopting and fostering, especially with our own kids?
I love that you brought up with our own kids, because as we know, there's so many stereotypes about kids that are in need of a forever family. And I love what you're bringing up, because it's true. Most of our issues are residual effects of slavery. Mm-hmm. There were slaves that had to be separated. And then whoever was left on the plantation, that had to become your family. We had to adapt. And so I think it's easy to stigmatize and blame families. But as you mentioned, these are our families. And so there really are generational traumas that are happening and responses. So when it comes to why is it that there are more Black kids proportionally in care, we can't disconnect it from the contextual factors. So I feel like I forgot your question. Though. You asked why, what?
I think you're hitting on just okay. the kind of the cultural impacts, the stigma and the perceptions around, like, why is it that we have these kind of, we still have these issues?
And I'll give a specific example for me personally. So when we brought our son home, and we had people had these impromptu baby showers. I remember this older woman coming up to me, and she whispered it. She said, "I adopted my son too." And so I would say, "Oh, it sounds so wonderful." And I was excited about it, but I was kind of taken aback, because the part of me was like, well, why are you whispering about the fact that you adopted your son? Because for me, our son is no different than Keith's daughters. He is our child, and he's a part of our family. So I guess to me, that's so that was there still is a stigma associated with adoption in our community. Yeah. And I really wonder if you all have any thoughts. If you have any thoughts about why that is, I'd be interested in knowing, because I was taken aback by that.
I mean, just to kind of continue, because I just kind of was like, I want to make sure I'm going the right direction. I just really think that we've always adopted, as I was saying, but I think formally there is a distrust in institutions. I mean, looking at even right now, COVID, are we getting the vaccine? Well, we're thinking about Tuskegee, these things that are really a part of our DNA. So why would I want to bring in a system that we know can disenfranchise our children? So I think that's a part of it. And then again, I think that a lot of the stigma and shame comes from, well, we usually have someone in our family. We need to know the kids, where they come from. So I think some of it actually, and this is, I don't, y'all know I can go on and on, but I just think a lot of it sometimes is a function of white supremacy. And sometimes we're even perpetuating it. We don't recognize it. Like, oh, you're going to adopt one of those kids. Where these are the same stereotypes that are usually about Black people. You know, well, they might be crazy. There might be this. So I think when having these conversations is so helpful to really dispel some of the myths.
So Aaron and Jasmine, did you all have any, once you made the decision to adopt, did you have any of those misgivings about the process, about, I don't know anything about the child, I don't know anything about their family history, I'm concerned about all those different things? Because when you have a child naturally, you bringing in whatever mess you got, whatever mess I have, and we're just creating this being with all of our mess and all of our DNA. But when you're adopting a child, you are bringing in a child into your home, into your family, and loving a child that you know really nothing about and know nothing about their family background. Were there any misgivings when you all made the decision to adopt?
I kind of thought about it, yeah, like, oh, what are we getting into? You know, at least with us, we have our family history. We kind of know what to expect. But I think talking to different friends, they're like, oh, you have that issue with biological kids too. You never really know what to expect either, you know? So, I mean, yeah, I think that just kind of helped me get over it. I mean, yeah.
So go ahead.
And I think our workers, they did a really good job of kind of helping us understand the different what do you call it, risks, or like breaking down the different categories of the type of children that may be up for adoption. Basically just making sure we're clear on, what, drug use means, what that could possibly mean versus not, what does the mental health of the parent, what that could. So I think we were, I'm not gonna say we were experts, but we were pretty well educated, informed about it. And for me personally, I mean, this kind of ties back into the previous question, but I'm not adopted, but my brother is. So I was already kind of exposed to it. We didn't talk about it a lot, but it wasn't a secret either. So he was just our brother. It wasn't, oh, he's someone else's kid. He was our brother. So we didn't really, for me, I didn't really have that notion. I even talked to my mom a little bit, like, how did you feel when you brought in, when you and dad brought in this other kid? And she's like, are you kidding? She was more afraid that he wouldn't love her. And, so it's, I guess from that, I kind of have a different view of it. I wasn't really, I was nervous about what could happen, but, I think we were well prepared.
Yeah.
So I think Monica did kind of I adopted my child too. I'm really interested in hearing from you guys what you've decided around how you have conversations, right? As they get older, is it like an open conversation just from the very beginning, and then bring them into the conversation, or you've got a date certain plan, like this is the day that we're going to sit down and have a conversation, or do you just go without them even having to feel that separation? Dave and Christine.
Yeah, I think, when we decided to adopt, we wanted to have an open adoption. We wanted to make sure that we were extremely transparent, because we've seen the horror stories of kids finding out later on in life that, parents had access to their original parents and never shared that information. And I didn't want to have that. I wanted to make sure that we be transparent, have them connected to their cousins, and have that open conversation. So our lived experiences with them could be the best possible, and we can handle any tough conversations that they would need to have, we can be as transparent as possible and not go around it, to be able to at least feel like we're protecting them here. So I think, we decided to do that.
Yeah, we did. And we had the opportunity to connect with the birth family early on, even before we adopted. And we had to decide, like, are we going, how open will we be? And as soon as we talked to the birth family, it was clear this is another Black family. And so when we talked, we had so many things in common. Just we connected. We all went to eat. And not to say that there weren't challenges on both ends, because I don't know. I really felt that in my spirit when Aaron said that your mom was thinking I was hoping that he would love me. I think as an adopted mom, I can't speak for us all, but for me, I think that's more of the struggle. So I know I had that, my own insecurities starting the process. I'm sure birth family did, but being able to really build that relationship. I'll never forget, one of our friends said, you know what, you have to think about it. If there is family that your kid has, there's no way that's not your family. I was like, that is so good. So when you view it that way, there's some biological family members you have that you're going to be a little, just, interact in different ways, right? So it just kind of opened my eyes. But actually, I think we really have just become family. So I know that you can, in my opinion, you can really feel that the kids are so happy. Like, our kids spend time with their birth family. We'll gladly say, what weekend do y'all want them? We really built that relationship, and I'm just so glad, because our kids will come to us. Now, I have to always say, it's not lilies and roses. Their adoption is complex. They will ask us complex questions since we don't have the answers. Birth family doesn't have the answers. But I do agree with my husband. At least it's open where we can process with them.
Yeah. How old are you all? How old are your kids?
Ooh, they act like they're about 66 and 43. But they're David, DJ, he is 6, and Ava is 4.
Okay.
So Aaron and Jasmine, so what is the right age to have conversations, or do you have conversations at all?
Yeah, I mean, we talk to our 3-year-old about it kind of casually. We read books about it, and we're like,
including your books.
Yeah. And we try to explain in their language, or try it in a way that they can understand. Like, okay, you didn't grow in mommy's tummy. You were adopted. You and your brother, and we don't know how much he understands, but
Well, I will share with you, because our son is 5, and so when I wrote so they were talking. For those of you all, our listeners who don't know. This is one of the books that I've written. I've written 2 for the sole purpose of explaining to our son, because like Christine said, to me, I think we differed in terms of our adoption is open. I still communicate with his birth mother, which is what she asked us to do. And so I keep in contact with her and send her pictures so she's updated, kind of his growth and development, because I don't know how that feels to have carried a child and then make the decision that I know that I can't do this. I'm going to let someone else raise them. And so he and I differed in terms of when to tell our son, but we knew that we were going to tell him, and trying to find the right way to tell him. And so to your point, Jasmine, that's the whole growing in my heart and in my belly was the reason why I wrote God's Promise, because I knew at 3, which is when I first wrote that book, he was 3, reading it to him, he kind of understood, but you could tell, okay, I didn't grow in mommy's belly. I grew in mommy's heart. He's still trying to kind of put them together, but we started the conversation. So he could tell his friends, oh, I didn't grow in my mommy's belly. I grew in mommy's heart. And then that developed into this book, which is a little bit older because it uses the word adoption. And so now this morning when we coming in here to do the show, he said, Mommy, what are you all talking about today? I said, we're talking about adoption. He was like, oh, okay. And then he walked off because it's not a foreign word for him. But it's like you said, Christine, my biggest fear was that once he put 2 and 2 together, he wouldn't love me anymore, right? And so I think a part of it, because he's not clingy, but he is definitely
he's mama.
He's definitely up under me. And I think a part of that is there's some desire to stay connected. He hasn't asked the questions about his birth mother yet, but I'm open to having those discussions. But I think just there's a fear as an adoptive mom about kind of when they come of age and put 2 and 2 together. And he has a biological sister, those types of questions. And I don't have the answer for those. But to Aaron and Jasmine's point, starting the conversation so at least it's not a foreign concept to them, I think is super important.
Well, I can't say enough about what you guys have done, not just making the decision to be adopted parents, but also extending yourselves out into the adopted community. And I know that you've started organizations on your own as well. And we are excited to hear more about them when we come out of our break, because we're up on our break. So
we'll be back after the break.
We are gonna do what makes us feel right. I'm just getting off the train. Haven't seen my engine work all day. I just wanna kick back and relax my feet. My best friend Sean is on the line.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all got to see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
It's important to plan ahead for emergencies, like the storm. When it kicked in, we had a plan. We were able to get in touch with each other in no time.
Idea how to find each other.
The whole experience was
the
fine.
most frightening 10 hours of my life.
If there's one piece of advice I'd offer other moms out there, it's to stay calm and keep to the plan.
Some parents plan ahead, some don't. Make sure you know where to find your family in an emergency. Start your plan at ready.gov. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
You've been injured. You deserve help from an attorney that knows how to handle your injury claim. This is Attorney Clinton Paris from the Law Office of Clinton Paris. For a decade, I worked for insurance companies, and now I use that knowledge and experience to help people that have been injured. For a free consultation, call me, Attorney Clinton Paris, at 813-413-7924. That's 813-413-7924, or at parislawoffice.com. At the Law Office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being hurt. Offices, Riverview.
Touch Radio is smooth soul.
Rocking your radio on the sounds of soul.
Playing your favorite R&B in Touch Your Radio.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe. Wherever we go, we are gonna do what makes us feel right.
All right, welcome back.
We are back. So if you missed the first half of our show, we were talking to the Johnsons and the Belliards about, if I'm mispronouncing y'all last name, just please tell me. Okay. So the Johnsons and the Belliard family, and we're talking about adoption. And we just, the reason we're doing November is National Adoption Awareness Month. And we wanted to show the Black faces within the adoption space, because we do adopt. We adopt too, yes, and we're going to pivot right now. So the reason I asked these two people, Aaron and Christine, on my show specifically, is because, as I may have mentioned at the beginning, when Keith and I, maybe I mentioned this before we started the show, we were kind of talking, when Keith and I made the decision to adopt, we felt like we were doing it by ourselves. Mm-hmm. So like, in terms of the resources about, well, what adoption agency do I go with? Do I go foster? All of those questions that we had, there was not another couple that we could really talk to, at least that we knew, again, because we don't talk about adoption, to ask them about their experience and their process. So we really were kind of going through that blindly, right? And so that's one of the reasons why we are so open about our process, because we hope that through our transparency, we are helping other people who desire to adopt as well. And you're not walking in the dark. And so I wanted to bring Christine and Aaron on, because they too are in this Black adoption advocacy space. Yes. And I use advocacy for myself very timidly, because I'm not as actively engaged as you all are. I just use my voice and my platform. But you all have created spaces for people of color, for Black families, in this adoption area. And so Christine is the founder of Fab Moms, which is fabulous adoptive Black moms. Yes. Okay. And then Aaron and his wife, Jasmine, are founders of What Adoption, and it is We Adopt Too. And that is a 501c3. So I'm going to talk to both. We want to talk to both of you all about your initiatives.
Well, we'll come back to the money part because that's obviously that's going to
that's the huge part.
That is a huge part. But please, David and Christine, tell us about Fab Moms and what created that. Like what was how did that come about?
You know, I so resonate with what Monica brought up as far as, okay, you decide to adopt and then it's like, then what? And I remember like scouring the internet, books, anything for like stories. And I saw a lot of transracial adoption stories, which is someone of a different race, primarily white people adopting Black children. And I related with the adoption part, but I'm like, well, what does it mean to not see myself reflected as an adoptive parent? And so I ended up saying, well, if there's nothing, I know I'm not the only person, because I started to slowly hear stories, make connections. And actually, Monica, I know you said you don't feel like you do a lot of advocacy. Yes, you do. You're one of the first people that I found when I even was looking at a hashtag about Black adoption with your book.
Oh,
wow. Yes.
Told you to quit.
And you were so encouraging. And I just said, because a lot of people were saying, well, why are you doing Fabulous Adopted Black Mom? Why not just Fabulous Adopted Mom? And for me, my husband and I, we tried to go into so many spaces. We took our children to an adoption camp for kids of color who were adopted. So we were like, oh, these are our people. We were the only Black couple there.
Really?
Out of like 100 parents, there might have been you and another Black man. And anyway, and I think for me in that moment, I really was moved. My husband will tell you, he had to console me the first night. There was a sea of Black children, about 90%, about 200 kids, and about 100 parents behind them for the first program, 95% white. And I think for me, it was just a moment of, not that I'm against transracial adoption, but what would it mean for more Black people to see the disparity, to feel the disparity? And so I really was like, I can do something. I didn't know what it would be. And God really laid on my heart the name and everything, Fabulous Adopted Black Mom. Fabulous, because a lot of times when we hear Black people connected to adoption, it's negative. Mm-hmm. So I wanted the first word to be, no, this is something that can be fabulous, beautiful, celebrated, adopted, because obviously we are parents through adoption. And then we are Black, because we really are trying to bring from the margin stories of Black people who have adopted, just like we're having this conversation. This is probably one of the first conversations between 3 Black adoptive couples that I've ever heard of publicly. This is a big deal. So anyway, the whole point was to help encourage adoption, bring awareness, show the faces. So if you follow us at the Fab Moms on Instagram, we always are highlighting. Monica was one of our first features. We highlight just like people like us. People can see your face and know like, oh, this is somebody like me. I'm hearing your story. We also want to we do bring together Black adopted moms. Because of COVID, we were supposed to have a fabulous retreat. It was all planned. Monica was also going to be a part, and she'll be when we get in person. But we did a virtual retreat. We're doing virtual hangouts every month. And I remember at first, I'm like, will people really come on? I was thinking it'd be 2 or 3 women. My husband will tell you, most of the women I've not met because of COVID, but we really are sisters.
Yeah.
Because you just know when you meet someone, you have that shared experience. We are also a 501c3. Our hope is to really center the voices of adoptees, because when I went to the adoption camp, what really struck me were the transracial adoptees who are Black, adopted by white parents. And they talked about how most of them will publicly tell you, I love my parents, but I wish I had a Black parent. Mm-hmm. I wish there was someone to guide me in being Black. So again, I just, with Fab Moms, the hope is to encourage more Black people to adopt and support the ones that do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is awesome. And Aaron and Jasmine, we know you guys are also a registered 501c3, but you have a very specific mission. And I know we talked about the money and the cost, which is makes it prohibitive. Tell us about what is.
what is.
What is all about.
So as you mentioned, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. I'll kind of jump back to the beginning how I got into it, and I'll fast forward. So similar to everyone here, when we went through the process, we noticed that, in all the sample profile books, both hard copies and online, all the families were white, pretty much. But we noticed that a lot of the kids were Black, just like Christine was saying. And that stood out to me. I asked our workers, is this the norm? They said, yes, it is. I asked, well, what's being done to change that? And pretty much the answer was nothing. That stuck with me, but I didn't really do anything about it with our first adoption, but it still could have kind of stuck with me. And but when we were doing our first adoption, I was looking into grants and that sort of thing to help pay for the adoption. Because for those of you out there, you may not know, private adoption is very, very expensive. It's, and not just for Black people, just for everybody. It's expensive. So I'm thinking, excuse me, since there's clearly a need for Black, families to adopt, that's another thing the agency workers told me, that Black birth parents often specifically request Black families, but they don't have a pool of Black families to choose from. So anyway, with that in mind, I'm thinking, okay, surely somebody's created some kind of adoption grant program specifically for us to help encourage us to adopt, or some kind of programs, because I've seen specific grants for people who are adopting special needs, and I probably saw something for transracial, I can't remember, but basically I've seen different grants, different programs geared towards different types of adoptions, but nothing specifically for Black parents adopting Black kids. So it really stuck with me. I didn't do anything after our first adoption, but then fast forward to 2019, we were in the process of adopting our second son. Shortly after that, I got a hold of a book our friend wrote. She's a nonprofit lawyer, and I read through the book about starting a nonprofit, and it just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of clicked, I guess you can say. It's something this is something practical I can actually do, because my wife will tell you, I'm not really a, activist, go march, go. It's for me, it's just purely practical. It's like, I'm in a position where I can do something. So I just like, okay, sure. Let me start this nonprofit, which, back to what we do is, our goal is pretty straightforward: to provide adoption grants specifically for Black families trying to adopt. And I guess it could potentially change in the future, but right now what we're holding to is we want to give a minimum of $5,000 per grant. We just put in the mail last week our first grant, so we're back down to we're back down to zero. So we're in fundraising mode. But yeah, the reason we chose 5,000 is, as I said before, it's expensive when you do the private route. Now, a lot of people, had told me, why don't you adopt to the, system or whatever, which is fine. There, you read the stats. There's a lot of our children in the system that need to be adopted, older children. But it's not just that. They also need to be adopted through private adoption. It's typically, domestic infant, which is what we did. Some international. It's not a either or, private versus foster. They need more of us in both spaces.
Yeah, they do.
So, but anyway, it's expensive. We decided, as myself and the board, to do 5,000 because anything else really won't impact the cost that much. We thought about, well, what if we do a bunch of $500, $1,000? $1,000 doesn't even cover the home study. So we're like, yeah, maybe we won't initially be able to give out as many, but we want to make sure every grant we give out has a significant impact. So that's what we do. We give out adoption grants, and also just it kind of morphed into a little bit more than that. We try to use our social media to promote Black adoption, and I don't know if we'll be able to talk a little bit about this.
You're pivoting very well, Aaron. You're pivoting very well. You had a question.
No, the information is outstanding. We want to make sure that we get the information on our site as well, and you guys' sites on our site, so that we can continue to spread the word. But I don't want us to get away from this interracial adoption, transracial as well. So, and David, I know you and I are both members of Black Greek Letter Organization, and we both have very strong initiatives around mentoring. Young black men, and so I'm curious to hear your perspective on what do you see when a young Black child or children need loving parents, and those parents don't look like us. Like what kind of things kind of go through your mind?
Yeah, the first thing that goes to my mind is, how could you procreate and not want to take care of your own? So for me, it's like, how can I do more to be able to help out kids in those situations? So being a part of, the mentorship program with my fraternity, and then trying to expose my kids to be a part of those things so they can be able to, when they grow up, be a lending hand, is something that, I see myself doing in the future.
Outstanding.
So Aaron, you talked about, I know before the show, you talked about other organizations and other groups that are in this adoption advocacy space. And Christine told me I'm an advocate. I'm going to tell you, Aaron, you were an advocate. Because as I told you, I wish that you were around when 5 years ago, when Keith and I were like, okay, so where are we pulling this money from? But I will tell you, because I'm a person of faith, that he makes everything perfect. So I know that was a concern of ours, but once God put it on him that you asked to be a mother and not be pregnant, everything else kind of fell in line. And so we made that decision January 2015. 9 months later, October 12th, we got our phone call, right? But in that process, there were concerns about, we do decent, but we're not independently wealthy. Where are we pulling $20,000, $30,000 from to pay for adoption?
And we had gone through IVF.
And we had already paid for 2 rounds of IVF, right? So the Lord God is good, because we could be eating cheese sandwiches. So you talked about other spaces in other groups in this adoption advocacy. And I know we talked before the show about the Black Adoption Collective.
Adoption.
Okay. So tell me, I know Christine, I think you were instrumental in starting that. What is, and I know that Aaron is a part of it, what is the Black Adoption Collective? What is that?
Well, Christine, she could feel free to jump in, because she pulled it all together, but we're still trying to, define it, but it's just a group of Blacks in the adoption spaces. I guess we kind of represent the adoptive parents, but there's some Black adoptees that are part of the space. I don't think any of the groups that we specifically collaborated with are centered towards the birth families, but I know that's some people we want to bring into it. And again, we're still working it out, everything we're going to do. We have some ideas, but it's essentially, we're just trying to get our voices out there, which is why it's great that things kind of worked out, that we came together right before National Adoption Month. Because if you check out our social media, we've all been plugging each other's stuff, including a virtual summit next Saturday. We can talk more about that later, but yeah, we're just, again, we're figuring everything out, but we're just trying to get our voices out there from all sides of the adoption triad, but from a Black perspective.
Yeah. Christine,
and I love what you mentioned, Aaron. We're trying to figure it out. And if you think about it, in my opinion, I think a lot of times as Black people, we're in a position of we're trying to figure it out. Okay. And so I think it's a parallel process. For me, the reason why I said, before National Adoption Awareness Month, let's see if we could bring these voices together. So when I entered this space with Fab Moms, I would just happen upon, if it's Monica and her book, if it's an adoptee who is like spitting wisdom, but I just would tell someone about it, like, oh, have y'all heard about this person? It's like, no, okay, and it just seemed like we were in the margins. So it really came to me, how could we center our own voices, not wait for someone to say, hey, we want to hear from you all. So I just said, those that I've connected with, I just honestly put people on a direct message, and I'm like, hey, I have this idea. November 1st, we hit it hard. We have a conversation about Black people connected to adoption in our work, because this is the thing too, it's not that we just adopt, we also we're a community, and we're a communal people, and it's important to allow people to know that they are not the only ones, that there are organizations, there are people that are here and have been doing the work way prior to all of us. So anyway, everyone immediately was like, yes, I'm in. So November 1st, We had a conversation. We had, I think it's close to 100 people. We had
It was
birth,
over 100.
yes, birth family members, adoption professionals, adoptive parents, and to me, the most important voices, the adoptees.
Yeah.
Share, and that was critical with this Black Adoption Collective. How do we center adoptees' voices? Because yes, as adoptive parents, we parent the adoptee, but our kids, they are going to grow up. So how can we hear from those who have been parented, who are adopted? And there's so many adoptees who are Black. If it's transracially, so we have people in the Black Adoption Collective who were transracially adopted by Black people, some that were in open adoption, some not, some in reunification, some not, some that found out later they were adopted, some from birth. So I just recommend follow at Black Adoption Collective, because as Aaron mentioned, we really do highlight what's going on, the pages you should follow, statistics that you'll want to know about. And I just want to also say, adoption is so complex, even amongst Black people, even us, all of us here adopted in different ways, at different ages, different stages of life, what have you. And so I just, in case I don't get a chance, I have to say this when we talk about the financial aspect. For us, we were considering IVF. That was our hope. And we were trying to get our pennies together. And I really did not know how little we knew about foster care. I just have to say, we didn't pay $1 to adopt. So if someone is listening and saying, oh, but I can't afford it, there is another avenue of foster care. A lot of children are already legally free, which means they need a home. So it's not as if sometimes there's this idea that we're getting in the way of family reunification, but there are kids that are literally hoping for a home. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And that's really good, because I know one of my really, really good friends from college, her and her husband were foster parents to lots of maybe 4 or 6 little boys. And then their son now, who is just, he should really be like, have his own show, because he is so charismatic. But they adopted him through the foster care system. And he's a minister. So they really advocate in that space for exactly the same reason, Christine, because sometimes it is economically just not feasible for folks to pay a private adoption and to really give some consideration to fostering, because a lot of those babies really want to just someone to hug them and love them. And she said when they come in, they've been moved from house to house. That's why I have this shirt, Adoption is a Ministry, because regardless of how old your child is when you adopt them or when you bring them in, adoption is not for everybody. It is not for every family, because you really have to navigate that space very delicately. Just like fostering, adoption is not for everybody, fostering is not for everybody. And I recognized early that fostering wasn't for me, because I love kids so much. And while I recognize reunification absolutely is the goal, it would be very challenging for me to bring a 1-year-old in my house and love on them and care for them for 2 to 3 years once their family is able to be reunited and then they're gone. That would be heartbreaking for me, even though I know going in that that's the goal.
So I just want to say to that, and you have to check your state, but in many states there is, yes, you can become a foster parent where the goal is family reunification. But in almost most states right now, there's so many kids that are already legally free where family reunification is not the goal. And there's a myth that you're only able to adopt a teenager. And there are a lot of teenagers, and the hope is that we can have people adopt teenagers. But unfortunately, with opioid crisis and a number of others, there are babies that need homes. There are toddlers. The age range is wide. But I just want to also state that, like, for us, we weren't like traditional foster parents. We were already matched with our kids, and then we had to go through the process of adopting them. Then I just want to say with foster care, just to advocate a bit, not only did we not pay for adoption, but our kids will also go to college for free in our state, any of the state schools, all the way up until the age of 28. And then monthly, we do receive a stipend, and they have free health insurance until they're 18. And I bring that up because as college tuition, I bring that up as African-Americans, sometimes when we think about our disparities, education is a big thing. So to know that your child is able, you already know, to go to college for free, that's major. So I just want to bring that up because I know I didn't know that until I think right before we adopted.
That's awesome.
And I just found that out like about 2 seconds ago when you said it. So That is awesome.
Really good information to have.
So Jasmine, I know we're coming up. We got a few minutes before we break. I would like to give you the opportunity to give a testimonial for another, young Black mom to be who's considering adopting. I would like for you to give kind of your own testimony as to why she should consider doing that.
As to why she should consider adopting or placing?
Put you on the spot.
I think with, at least with a good agency, she'll have a lot of good resources and people to help her. I know, like with our agency, they do a lot of help with the birth moms and providing counseling and whatnot. So there is that to look forward to. With adoption, or if she does decide to place with adoption, she doesn't have, it's more permanent. She won't have to worry about, like with foster care, jumping from house to house, and just not knowing what to expect for her child. She can also make the decision to be open and have, contact and communication with the family and her child, kind of see it grow up. Doesn't mean that she has, just placing your child for adoption doesn't mean you have to never see them again.
Yeah.
So you can, request open adoption if that's, if that's her will, if that's her choice. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're here resources available.
Yeah.
You're not
like have somebody there to kind of help them, get their adoption plan together, and they won't have to go through it alone.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I think we probably have a minute left before we're wrapping up. I want to sincerely thank. I would love to get together again to do this. And I would also, because we are all close, we're not that far apart. We all should get together because our kids are around the same, our children are around the same age. So that is the beauty of this, in that we are a community and our children can, because I've said this, and not that biological children aren't special, but I have said this about our son. There is something, and when him and my girlfriend's son get together, there is something done. It's like they know. It's like they know. And so we've shared with our son that you can do anything that you want. And he says, because he's competitive, he told us, he said, Mommy, babies that are born in hearts are much better than babies that are born in bellies. I said, well, it's not better. It's just different. He said, no, we're better. And then he walked off. And so I think we are both just tremendously blessed. He wakes up happy. I get emotional every time I think about it. He wakes up happy every morning, every day. Mm-hmm. Sunshine, there's no rain. It's sunshine from the moment. It's sunshine and talkativeness from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to sleep. So I say all that to say to anybody that is considering adoption or even fostering, recognizing that as much of a blessing as we are to them, I can honestly say that our son is absolutely a blessing to our family, because it's not even he completes it, he just kind of takes it over. Yeah. He just takes it over. So this has been,
listen, I want you guys to talk about the upcoming event though, as we.
The virtual summit.
Organization called Yes We Adopt. That's the organization's name. I'm blanking out. I'm trying to see if I can find the flyer. But there's a virtual summit next Saturday.
The 14th. It's from 10 to 2. The great thing is they're going to have a panel of Black adoptive dads. I think, Aaron, you're on the panel, right? Yes. And so is David. So y'all can get more from them. They're going to have a panel of adoptees. They're going to have a panel for adoptive parents, a panel for those who work in adoption. So it really will be, something that's never happened, to bring voices connected to adoption together. For powerful conversations, and a birth mom panel. So I'm really excited.
Oh, wow.
It'll be great. You can register. YesWeAdopt.org, I believe, is the website. But I'm sure you all can post these.
Yeah, YesWeAdopt.com/summit.
/summit. It'll be great. So shout out to Fab Mom Stacy. She is the founder of Yes We Adopt, and she and her husband are doing amazing things as well. If we're plugging things, can I please just share Fab Moms? We're hosting 2 events for National Adoption Awareness Month. One is next Thursday. I recommend everyone attend. We have the Dr. June P. Murray. She was adopted in the year, you're not going to believe it, 1943. She has so much wisdom. She was an adoption worker, professor. She's amazing. So you can find the information on any of our platforms. And then on November 22nd, if you're interested in adopting, we are having a Fab Mom 101. We'll go live from our Facebook page. Come and ask all your questions. We'll share our stories. There'll be a panel of Fab Moms. So I just want to add that.
Outstanding. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all so much. And congratulations, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris.
Be safe. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye. Thank y'all.
Thank you.